Hi, my name is David Drake. I'm Director for People and Nature at Natural England, and I'm delighted to be able to welcome so many of you to today's webinar. Over the next hour, we'll be hearing from various partners about the Resource Hub and associated report findings to support the integration of nature into healthcare sites across England. So, just like to start by introducing the webinar and take a couple of minutes to set out why the partnership between Natural England and the NHS is so important to us. Natural England, as an arm's length body in the DEFRA group, is the statutory advisor to government on the natural environment. Our statutory purpose sets out our responsibilities for the protection of nature, biodiversity and landscapes, and for the promotion of outdoor recreation and access to the countryside. But if we're to deliver on these, we face a much more fundamental issue in the need to rebuild everyday connection between people and the natural world. As a society, we face multiple challenges. We've got increasing numbers experiencing mental health challenges. We've got high levels of social inequity, unsustainable levels of demand on the healthcare sector, and an increasingly challenging economic outlook. And all of this set against a backdrop of climate and nature crises that put at risk the basic provision of clean air, water, and food. Nature connection has the potential to have a positive impact in all these areas. If we can work to enable and encourage many more people from across all sections of society to form a connection with nature and to feel the benefits of doing so, then we can start to address some of the fundamental causes of these challenges. But to achieve this, we need to provide natural spaces in every neighbourhood, spaces which feel accessible and safe and welcoming, and encourage communities to use and shape these places in ways that work best for them. The healthcare estate may not offer vast landscapes for large-scale ecological restoration, but as an anchor institution, the NHS has a key role to play in supporting positive social and environmental outcomes for the communities that it serves. And by enhancing green spaces around hospitals, clinics, and community health centres, we can bring accessible nature closer to where people live, where they work, and where they receive care, making it part of their everyday life. And at the same time, these spaces can play a really important role in supporting local wildlife through increasing the connectivity of urban habitats. And if we can do this, we help build that foundation of nature connection, which offers a sustainable and cost-effective means of addressing all those challenges that I set out earlier. Natural England is currently reviewing its 5-year strategy, and the importance of this aspect is recognised and emphasised as 2 of the 6 priority aims that we've set out in an outlined strategic direction that we published in April. So one of those aims sets out our role in healthy placemaking. These are places that are healthy for people and healthy for nature. And a second of these aims sets out the need to build nature connections which everyone can benefit from. But we know that we'll only achieve our aims by identifying synergies between those and the aims of other sectors, and by forming close partnerships based on shared goals. And this is leading us to work closely on projects backed by a range of government departments, like those for housing, communities and local government, education, culture, media and sports, work and pensions. But of all these, our work with the healthcare system is the most significant of all in its potential to achieve a systemic change for nature connection and societal well-being. And we have a clear shared goal for Natural England and NHS estates, and that is around managing the estate for the benefit of patients, of staff, and of the wider community. We're well aware that this is not easy. It's set against multiple resourcing pressures, competing priorities, and structural change. But at Natural England, we're committed to continuing and deepening our work with the health sector and to supporting this in whatever ways we can. And the resources that we'll be describing in this webinar, developed in collaboration with the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare and others, are a key part of that support. along with our network of specialised national and regional health sector advisors. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Dan from the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare, who's going to provide us with an overview of the project. So Dan.
Great, yeah, so hello everyone, and thank you for joining today's session. So I'm Dan Love, our Green Space for Health project manager at the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare. I'm very pleased to share the outcomes of our Nature for Health Resources project. So just for a bit of context, it was funded through Nature England and supported by NHS England, and aims to better understand and respond to the resource needs of the health sector when it comes to embedding nature into healthcare sites. So in terms of setting the scene, so as I'm sure a lot of us on the call will know, nature is increasingly recognised as a vital asset in healthcare, with supporting recovery, staff wellbeing, health equity, climate resilience, and many other things. But despite that growing awareness and enthusiasm, many healthcare staff told us and that they face real challenges in turning those intentions into action, and also resources either they don't exist that we need, or if they do exist, they're scattered across the World Wide Web, and sometimes not written with the realities of healthcare in mind. So the project is set out to address some of that, to get a clearer picture of what's available, what's missing, and what would be useful for healthcare staff moving forward. Next slide, please. So we had a strong and focused set of objectives from the outset. So in summary, we wanted to map the current state of resources available to healthcare teams, identify the gaps, and understand needs across estates, clinical, sustainability and engagement teams. Then importantly, make these resources easier to access through a centralised hub and provide strategic recommendations that support longer term change through policy, practice and training as well. Next slide. So to do this, we used a mixed methods approach. So we conducted a thorough desk review of existing resources. We ran surveys with healthcare staff across different roles and interviewed stakeholders from environmental and health organisations in the sector. And the aim was to hear directly from those delivering healthcare or those supporting sustainability across the healthcare system. Next slide, please. So who engaged with the project? So we had engagement across varying roles, sustainability leads, estate teams, clinicians in mental health, primary care, allied health professionals and community engagement staff and others. We were also supported through contributions from stakeholders across the health and environmental sectors, including Nature England, NHS England, Greener Practice, RSPB, TCV, RHS and more. And this cross-sector input really helped with shaping a more complete picture of the challenges and opportunities as well. So next slide, please. So in terms of key findings, we asked people where they go for resources and what formats they find most useful at the moment. So unsurprisingly, there are a wide range of resources that people use, and thankfully some of it is NHS Forest, which is our flagship green space programme within the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare, so that's great to hear. And peer networks they use, local authority websites and others listed on the slide. And when it came to format, the message was quite clear in keeping it practical and accessible, and staff wanted more visual content and shorter, more digestible content to engage with and learn from, such as videos, webinars, short e-learning modules and podcasts as well. And these insights helped shape how we structured the resource hub, but also from the outset we did choose to focus on freely accessible resource types and a set array of types of resources to make the scope more manageable for us, so that we can curate the resource hub and our research more effectively. So the next slide, please. Yeah, so in summary, we found a strong foundation to build on, especially in areas such as horticulture for health and well-being, particularly around therapeutic horticulture, green space design, biodiversity, nature connection, and community engagement. And these topics supported a variety of resources, many of which were fully or partially relevant to healthcare settings. Next slide, please. In terms of gaps and challenges, we found that existing resources are sometimes quite lengthy, quite technical, and often designed with other sectors in mind, making them difficult to adapt to healthcare settings. And staff told us that they often would struggle to know which resources are reputable or up to date, leaving them unsure where to start and whether it's a trustworthy source. They highlighted the need for those quick reference tools, as I said earlier, and clear guidance on particular things such as infection control and practical support for tailoring interventions to different patient groups as well. And another key point that was raised was around time constraints being a major concern, and any new resource developed or adapted would need to fit in with an existing workload rather than becoming an added burden. Next slide, please. Yeah, so following on with some more gaps and challenges. So this was I think that we found was around the sort of policy landscape, if you like, being quite complex, and it can be challenging to align those siloed initiatives for achieving health, environmental and nature recovery outcomes, and also having a fragmented research base on nature and health, and it spans multiple disciplines, and it's really packaged in a way to support clinical or operational decision making within healthcare, and that need for higher level leadership as well. So without that strong, visible backing from NHS leaders, nature recovery often remains off the radar or isn't that priority. So embedding nature into policy, such as in green plans, regulatory frameworks, and reporting and monitoring evaluation approaches would make it more of a strategic priority and embed nature recovery into healthcare planning as well. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is just a bit of an overview of some of the qualitative feedback and conversations that I had, but also through the surveys. So staff asked for guides, evidence summaries and business cases to help make the argument for green space development, and clinicians told us that they lacked confidence to recommend and integrate nature into patient care pathways because they didn't have the access to the evidence in that operational context they needed to make those decisions. And also there was an appetite for tailored resources to support particular groups. So, for example, neurodivergent patients and those with language barriers, and guidance for more indoor access, so virtual nature for inpatients, for example. Next slide, please. So in terms of recommendations, so what do we do with all of these insights? So we came up with a variety of recommendations, and some of them are featured here. So firstly, we need tailored guidance. Resources should cover more on topics such as biodiversity net gain to indoor nature access, delivered in a diverse array of formats as well, and ones that were particularly preferable for healthcare professionals that I mentioned earlier, and co-created with healthcare teams to understand the operational realities of those settings. And all of this must be in a one central up-to-date hub, which I'll be showing you later, that's easily searchable and to keep it practical, trusted and responsive to the needs of healthcare staff as well. Next slide, please. So we also need to embed this work into training and education. So that means working with training providers, professional bodies and universities to integrate nature into clinical guidelines, CPD, student placements as well, and having those evidence summaries framed in a way that resonates with healthcare professionals. Next slide, please. So also strengthening collaboration across teams. So estates, clinical and sustainability teams, there was insights from people that contributed to the project that they can work in often in isolation. So having that better link up within the NHS system, but also within the wider environmental sector. And then also peer learning and mentorship, and how sites don't have to start from scratch, and people can learn from others that are doing great work already. So yeah, next slide, please, Una. So looking ahead, so with this project, we've taken an important step to hopefully better equipping, informing, inspiring healthcare professionals in the wider sector. And this work aligns well with the expansion of our Nature Recovery Ranger programme, which some of you may be aware of, where rangers are placed in particular NHS trusts, managing particular sites, supporting staff, patients and communities to develop accessible, sustainable and good quality green spaces. And as a part of the expansion of this programme, we're developing practical resources and co-developing them through the programme with the participating trusts, but with several we expect to be for wider NHS use as well. So this project ensures that it's going to be shaped in a real world sort of relevant way, aligning with NHS priorities on the ground as well. So it's a good next step for us as an organisation. And we'll continue working with key stakeholders such as Natural England, NHS England, and the stakeholders that contributed that I mentioned earlier to build that capacity, strengthen that collaboration, and support nature recovery across the healthcare system. Next slide, please. So thank you for listening to my part of the talk. Obviously, as you can see on the slide, we have our Nature for Health Resource Hub live, and if you haven't already, please do take a look. We've got over 300 resources there, and with a variety of different filtering systems to find things that are more relevant to you, and to hopefully help support your next step with developing a big or small change within greening your site. So yeah, please do scan the QR code or follow the nhsforest.org/resources, and you'll be able to find that, along with an evidence summary of the research that I've just been talking about. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I'm going to pass over now to Alexis, who will be sharing her reflections on the Resource Hub and the report findings, particularly from an estates and sustainability perspective.
Thank you very much, and I have to put a big congratulations out to Daniel for putting such an amazing piece of work together and dealing with so many different stakeholders. So thank you, Daniel, for all your efforts and work. From a perspective of somebody who's working on the ground, this is one of the most valuable resources I've come across, and it will just only get better and better as we go through. So as a way of introduction, I'm Alexis Percival. I'm the Energy and Sustainability Manager with Yorkshire Ambulance Service. Next slide, please. So I've been working as one of the stakeholders with Daniel and all the NHS Forest and Natural England team to look at what we do. And these are the key aspects that from Daniel's major reports, looking at what we need to do and how we can kind of help create those spaces. And it shows an embedded aspect. We need to look at healthy spaces outside. We need to build climate resilient estate through nature-based solutions, looking at embedding the nature in hospital care and rehabilitation, and also looking at supporting local wildlife through lots of different habitat creations. But also the overarching aspect is how we, as a part of our our communities can help embed green spaces as being a key part of that going forward. Next slide, please. So from me, one of the key things is just going through all the amazing amount of stuff that's in here. So if you've clicked on the NHS Forest Resources page and have a look at, you'll come up with this search engine. And one of the aspects that's really useful is that it's all broken down into your audience. So looking at, do you want to engage with people? Are you looking at it from sustainability perspective? Are you estates? Are you clinical? And if we click onto the next slide, you can then see what there is as the themes. So there's lots of different themes to have a crack at: biodiversity, resilience, community engagement, green jobs, through to how you enhance your green spaces for health and wellbeing, horticulture, inequity. I'm sure you can read them all on the list, but it just shows the breakdown of what there is and the wealth of stuff that we have across the whole of the UK and further afield to feed into this. And as a resource, it's so fabulous to kind of go through it. From an estates and facilities perspective, it helps to look at what we've got. So next slide, please. The filtering by format aspect can also highlight some of this, so you can actually see whether you want to do it as different kinds of training and different types of, whether you want to watch it as a webinar or if you want to have it as PDFs, whatever it might be. But when you click on whatever your aspects is you need, it comes up with this stuff. So all of those keywords are in there, and as you can see, I'm part of the digital tree pack aspect. But it highlights what we've got as a different wealth of things. And I would really encourage you to go and spend a good half an hour battling through lots of different measures and different things you want to have a look at. And it kind of comes up with so much, a wealth of information. Once you've clicked through, make sure you come back. So if you click onto the next slide, you'll go through from this page through to, so say, looking at managing road verges, which specifically looks at green spaces and road verges, and it's a plant life stuff. And if you click again, next slide, please, it will then take you to the plant life pages. So it takes you through to all those resources in the wider internet, and also there's lots of PDFs and useful e-learning packages as well. So if you're wanting to learn about something very specific, there's everything that's in there. But also if you stumble on something that isn't on our resources pages, it is worthwhile getting back to NHS Forest so they can add it in. So this is a two-way street. If you find those resources that aren't on here, which Daniel's done such a fabulous job, everything will be there. But if there's something new that's been issued, and if you're, say, for example, work for Plant Life or you're at Natural England and you want it signposting back, it is really worthwhile having that conversation. Next slide, please. So what I'd really, really recommend is have a look at all of these different things. There's so many different bits and pieces that are in this section for anybody that's working to do with green estates, to do with facilities, sustainability, but also anybody who's new into this. There's so much that can start you on the journey to understanding what we need to do. But also we've got so many different bits and pieces that are beneficial to feed into climate resilience, for example. When we're looking at stuff within our estates, we need to understand how those we can pitch it slightly differently. And it might be just about moving soil around, having a different sustainable urban drainage, but the resources are here. So it's worthwhile going through and having a look at everything we've got. Next slide, please. I think I'm passing on to Vicky now.
Thank you very much, Alexis and Dan. It's really exciting to hear about the database of resources, and we're really excited to explore how we can contribute to the resources as well, so they really align with healthcare sites. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited today to talk to you about an initiative from the Royal Horticultural Society. So this will be a new resource and it will be available from spring next year. It's the RHS Wellbeing Garden Blueprint. Next slide, please, Una. So, oh, and the next one. So the blueprint is more than just a guide. It's a freely accessible, science-backed resource that brings together the latest research on how gardens can positively impact our mental, physical, and emotional well-being. It's drawing on UK and international studies, including some by the RHS and many other leading researchers, to distill this evidence into practical and empowering guidance for everyone. So whether you're managing a large public garden, a discrete healthcare space, or nurturing a small balcony space, we hope this resource will be designed to help you unlock the full wellbeing potential of the green spaces. So it will be hosted on the RHS website and will feature general wellbeing guidelines tailored to individual and organisational needs, a breakdown of the active ingredients in gardens that promote health, and real-world case studies from ambitious landscape projects to simple budget-friendly ideas. So next slide, please. So the blueprint is based on 3 core principles defining a wellbeing garden: a long-lasting legacy that fosters a sense of place, belonging, and ownership, a hopeful place to experience a healthy range of emotions, and a diverse environment of resilient planting. So today I'll walk you through what the blueprint offers and how it can be used and why it matters, not just for gardeners, but for communities, healthcare, and urban planning alike. So next slide, please. So the blueprint is based on principles, science principles as well. So led by RHS Science and in collaboration with RHS National Communities teams, the development of the blueprint has led to the identification of 3 core principles. Oh, I think we have just on that side, sorry. To understand how gardens can support health and wellbeing, the RHS Wellbeing Garden Blueprint outlines a clear set of pathways from initial exposure to long-term outcomes. It all begins with garden exposure, and this includes both active gardening, where people interact with plants, soil, and the natural environment, and passive exposure, simply being present in a well-designed, well-managed garden. These experiences are the foundation for a wide range of health benefits and healthy emotions. From there, we see a cascade of intermediate outcomes, the first signs that gardens are having a positive effect, and these fall into 3 main categories. Environmental benefits, such as reduced exposure to air and noise pollution, improved air quality, protection from extreme temperatures, and reduced risk of flooding. Physiological responses, including lower blood pressure and healthier heart rate variability, reduced muscle tension and skin conductance, etc. And finally, social and emotional outcomes, like a stronger sense of community and belonging, cultural identity and connection, and opportunities for recreation and shared experiences. Over time, these immediate effects contribute to longer-term improvements in health and well-being through social health, physical health, and mental health. These pathways show us that gardens are not just beautiful spaces, they're powerful tools for public health, and the blueprint is here to help us design and manage them in ways that maximize these benefits for everyone. So next slide, please. So let's take a moment to think about what makes a garden truly nourishing, not just for the eyes, but for the mind, body, and soul. So the blueprint is built on this idea that gardens can be designed to support well-being in ways that are personal, local, and ever-evolving. This isn't a rigid formula, it's a flexible guide that empowers people to make choices that feel right for them. Choices that spark curiosity, invite exploration, and foster a sense of balance and fulfillment. So the principles to optimize through design are diversified planting. So the right plants depend on the local environment, the soil, the climate, and the people. So we start by asking questions: what thrives here? What speaks to the community? Fostering serenity. Many garden users are seeking peace, a quiet space to unwind, reflect, or simply breathe. How can we design for that? So think soft textures, gentle colors, and calming scents. Or we're creating distinctive spaces. Even the smallest gardens can have zones: a nook for reading, a patch for growing, a corner for conversation. And these spaces help meet diverse needs and give people a sense of ownership. And we encourage exploration. Gardens should invite movement and discovery. And can we stimulate all the 5 senses? Next slide, please. So one of the areas within the blueprint was to design a standardized participation for inclusive garden design. So we think this is a really exciting aspect of the blueprint, as its commitment to consistency, clarity and inclusivity, not just in garden design, but how we talk about and involve people in the process. This part of the project focuses on standardizing terminology across our case studies. Why are we doing this? Because we all speak the same language and follow shared frameworks. We can collaborate more effectively across different communities, healthcare spaces and disciplines. So to build this foundational model, we conducted a review of key participatory models, including Sherry Arnstein, Roger Hart, and the Think Local Act Personal model of co-production. These models helped us shape this model, and we've developed this from input from multiple stakeholders, including the NHS. So the key shift to this approach is we've made some important notes how we approach participation. We've moved away from the key traditional ladder metaphor, which can feel hierarchical, and instead created a circular model to help us recognise that all forms of participation are valuable and not those just at the top of the ladder. Second, we've placed co-production at the heart of the process. That means actively involving people in shaping the garden, not just consulting them, but truly listening and building together, acknowledging that every type of engagement has value. Third, we've updated our language to reflect inclusive mindset. For example, replacing terms like coercion with provision helps reframe engagement as supportive rather than controlling. And finally, we've merged informing and educating into a broader concept of sharing, a two-way exchange where everyone contributes knowledge and insight. So this approach matters because it reflects diverse needs and capacities. It ensures flexibility and inclusivity. It supports incremental process and progress and adapts to context-specific needs. And most importantly, it sustains engagement so that people stay involved as gardens evolve. So if you go to the next slide, please. So within the blueprint, we're going to have a database of different case studies to bring it to life. It's going to be a rich collection that we will build on year of real-world examples through healthcare settings, school settings, community settings, and home gardens that show how well-being gardens can be created in a wide range. They offer practical guidance and inspiration for anyone looking to design a garden that supports health and happiness. And some of these projects are ambitious, large-scale gardens that have been carefully planned and tested over time, and others show how small, affordable steps can still make a big difference, especially when resources are limited. What unites them all is a shared commitment to legacy and sustainability, and these gardens aren't just designed for today, they're built to grow, evolve, and continue delivering well-being benefits long into the future. And if you could go to the final slide, please. I just wanted to show an example of some really low budget, low resource, big impact projects the RHS has done. So this was a planter project at Kingston Hospital, and it started off with about 4 different planters across the estate with different departments, and I think it's increased to 15 now. Every season a new planter is created and they have a big celebration each year, and it really brings each hospital closer together, drawing on different themes around sustainability, biodiversity and well-being. So to finish off, the RHS science team are also conducting peer-reviewed research, which is underway to strengthen the Blueprint's scientific foundation. So an upcoming publication on flower, colour and emotion is expected in spring 26, and this will be launching alongside the Blueprint. So that's it from me. And handing over to Ian, thank you.
Great, Thanks for that, Vicky. That was fantastic, and thanks to David, Dan, and Alexis as well for the presentations. Hi everybody, I'm Ian Stenton. I'm head of estate sustainability at NHS England. So we've been part of the program for this, supporting Dan and Centre for Sustainable Healthcare and Natural England with the development of the resource. We recognise that we get feedback that there's a real need for this for people. So it's fantastic to have it live and to be able to talk about it today. Just quick updates from me. Apologies, I think a couple of people had difficulty accessing the webinar at the start, but as it says in the chat, it has been recorded and we're hoping that it'll be available by the end of this week, the recording and the transcript, so that's no problem. We'll also do a quick review of the questions, so if we don't get a chance to go through all the Q&A in the next couple of minutes, we'll pull that together, and where we can, we'll provide resources. I've been looking at the Q&A and conscious that there's quite a few to do with social prescribing and other aspects, and the National Academy of Social Prescribing is also pulling together some resources, so we'll be able to guide you there as and when they're available. What we try to do with this piece of work that Dan's been working on and we've talked through is very much to focus on how we can use the NHS estate to enhance nature, whether it's for the benefit of patients, staff, our local communities, or biodiversity and nature in itself. So that's the focus of this, to talk more about the NHS estate, or the healthcare estate as well, and how that can be used. So that's that. We are due to finish at 2:45. I recognise that some people will need to drop off, so we'll continue with the Q&A for a few minutes, and if you do have to drop off, as I say, that will still be recorded and will be available. I'm just going to give a quick update from a NHS England perspective as well, because there's a couple of the questions touch on that. So from our perspective, all secondary care trusts have been asked to redevelop their green plan, or refresh their green plan, sorry, this year. And the green plan guidance does talk about the impacts of green space, and it's not a mandatory requirement, but we would encourage all the trusts, and obviously a lot of the people who will be on this call have got particular interest in green spaces, so to make sure that can be incorporated into your green plan wherever possible. Similarly, the ICS infrastructure strategy guidance came out last year, and all ICSs have written their infrastructure strategy, and in that we asked people to consider biodiversity net gain as a mandatory requirement, because it will be needed for any developments, but also to look at how ICS strategy can link in with local nature recovery strategies. And there's a real opportunity. The geographies are very similar. Natural England is spending a lot of time to help areas to develop the local nature recovery strategies, and we know that the NHS can play a real part in that, whether it's nature corridors or looking after sites that are particularly important, and making sure that we can feed in into those local projects, and to start to look at how we can work with local stakeholders cohesively. So I will now start to look through the questions. I've written down some of the themes, but I appreciate that people have been added in some extras as we go along. So one of the questions was Hannah had asked about how a nature connection trainer can help to prepare practical resources. So like Alexa said, Dan's pretty much covered everything that we know is available at the moment, but there is still opportunities to provide guidance, and the report that Dan's done to support the this resource hub really goes into what's required. So he's already covered things that like visual webinars and videos and blogs and things like that work. So I don't know whether, Dan, if you've got ideas about how we could move this forward with specific case studies or additional practical resources where you identified if there are any gaps.
Yeah, no, thank you for the question. I think you've sort of summarised it a little bit for me already, in that I for the development of the resource hub, when it came to Nature Connection, there was a lot out there, and a lot of it was transferable into a healthcare setting. But I think in terms of anything else that could be developed, I think it's the diversifying the formats, because a lot of it, in terms of what I saw, were guides, toolkits, which obviously have their value, but they have, from my knowledge, been quite lengthy, and made it difficult to be more digestible for people that want to engage in this area. So as you were saying, Ian, about creating more videos, podcasts in this area to meet a variety of different healthcare professionals' needs in how they like to engage and learn in this area. There's obviously more that probably could be done in this space, but I think Nature Connection is one thing that's definitely more prominent within the resources that I found.
That's great, thank you. I'm looking for as well the one with the I've written down the one with the most likes in the heart. So thanks to everyone who's done that as well. Has come from Joan about the evidence, so how we can provide evidence to clinicians, particularly about the impacts of green space and the benefits it has, whether that is for staff or for patients. And Deborah's asked a similar question as well. So I don't know whether either Vicky or Lucy, would one of you be able to come in and talk a bit about that? I appreciate we're straying a bit into the clinician side. Go on, Vicky, thanks for coming in.
That's okay. I just wanted to highlight a project that's starting up at Colchester Hospital with the Wellbeing Garden there. I don't know what the exact details are, but they are looking to measure the impact with quite distinct user groups of the garden. I believe they are through staff, so around staff health and wellbeing, with a control group of staff who don't use the garden and a group who do use the garden. But as far as wider studies, we're not aware of it within the RHS. Ashby may have a comment she can pop in if there is anything else, but that's the project that we know of.
That's great, thank you. And I think there will be more details that come out of that, and more projects that are working. There's a project at Bradford as well that they're looking at, which is fantastic. There's been a couple of questions about primary care, so I'd like to pick that up. These resources are applicable to all, and there's loads of great case studies from primary care and GP practices. So when I was talking about green plans, that's obviously focused just for secondary care, but ICSs have green plans, and the ICS infrastructure strategies also cover primary care, same as the ICS green plans do. So this is definitely something that we can work across for all. There is one question about what funding is available. I don't think that anybody will have an answer for that. Please jump in if you're aware of that. But I think as well, if people look at the resources that have been pulled together, there's a lot of projects that are done with very little resources needed. Hopefully the time that will be saved through accessing this resource will really help. So for just as we've gone 5 minutes over, so just look at one last question. So this one was really interesting to me. Bobby was asking about how we know what trusts are participating, and would include primary care in that as well. And there was another question about projects that are already doing work locally, and how do they let us know? So that's one. There are, Dan, Centre for Sustainable Healthcare has communities, don't they, that people can sign into to learn what other people are doing and what's going on. Is there a way, how do people access those?
Sure, yeah. So yeah, apologies, Bobby, I may have not actually interpreted your question, because I did answer to do with the Ranger programme, because I perhaps you meant that, but if and I've shared the link to your question if that is what you meant, but if it's more broadly about just generally knowing what everyone's doing, there's our sustainability network. So we have our Green Space for Health network through the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare, and we can certainly incorporate that within the wrap up email that we send after the call, where there's a good number of members and people that want to share what they're up to, best practices and things that they've seen. So that's one way that you can find out what trusts are doing. Also, we do have our map, which is an interactive map to an extent where you can see what trusts have been doing in terms of their green space projects. So quite often when they've accessed biodiversity support from us through our free tree program, we get them to fill in the project that they've done and a bit of a summary, and then we put it out onto our map so you can just see an overview of what's out there. So that's another way that you can see it, both through our networks but also through this interactive map that we have on our NHS Forest website, which is another thing that we can include within the wrap-up notes if that's of interest.
Fantastic, thanks for that, Dan. And that's what I was just going to say as well, that because there are so many questions in the chat, we'll wrap up now, but we will respond to those because there's some really interesting ones and some that ideas that we can take forward. As a group, we work together really closely, and we are picking up the recommendations that Dan and the Centre for Sustainable Healthcare developed, so we can incorporate those as well. So just again, like to thank David, Dan, Alexis and Vicky for the presentations. Thank everybody for attending, for your questions and comments. Really, really appreciated. And we'll send everything out to you hopefully by the end of this, or certainly the recording by the end of this week, and then we'll work on the Q&A and add them on. But I encourage you all to access the hub, have a look through, and then give us some feedback. Thanks everyone, have a great day.